Imagine hearing a gunshot just, echo through the halls of this massive, incredibly wealthy estate.
And it's a really sharp, jarring crack, right?
Exactly. And the really shocking part, the realization that hits you right after, is that the gun used to kill this towering, powerful intellectual figure. Well, it actually belongs to the private investigator.
Right, the very investigator who was hired to solve a completely different death.
It is just this mind-bending mystery where absolutely nothing is what it seems. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. We are broadcasting to you from Chesterton Radio right here in Atchison, Kansas.
Always great to be here.
And our mission today is to unpack this incredibly complex, multi-layered story. We're looking at the classic BBC Saturday theater production of P.D. James's An Unsuitable Job for a Woman.
Which is just a phenomenal piece of audio drama.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore all the intricate details of what starts as a closed suicide case, but then it just completely unravels into this dark, sprawling family conspiracy.
Yeah, we'll be looking at the psychological motivations, the physical clues, and, just this fascinating dynamic of a young, totally unconventional detective. She's navigating this world of extreme wealth, privilege, and just massive deception.
I got to say, listening to this broadcast, the sheer brilliance of the plot, it's like watching a perfectly constructed set of dominoes fall. It is so satisfying.
It is, but I think we also have to ground that excitement a bit because, the story isn't just a clever puzzle.
Right.
It's a really profound examination of human arrogance. It shows the extreme, terrifying lengths that people will go to just to protect their fabricated realities.
Completely. And since we're assuming you, the listener, have just heard the radio play, we aren't going to just recount the plot.
No, nobody needs a play-by-play.
Exactly. We want you to imagine being handed this case. The police have already closed it, right?
Huh.
And you're armed with nothing but your deceased partner's unlicensed gun and your own intuition. Like, how do you even start?
It's a terrifying premise because right off the bat, you have to look for the anomalies.
Right. Which brings us to our detective, Cordelia Gray. And she completely shatters the traditional detective archetype.
Oh, absolutely. She stands so far apart from the classics.
I mean, she's 22 years old.
Right, 22.
She just inherited this struggling detective agency because her partner, Bernie Pride, literally took his own life.
And left her his business and his unlicensed gun. That is some heady baggage to start a career with.
It really is.
Yeah.
And her very first solo client is this wealthy, intensely arrogant microbiologist, Sir Ronald Callender.
Who hires her to find out why his 21-year-old son, Mark, supposedly hung himself in this totally dilapidated gardener's cottage.
But the irony here, and this gets right to the title of the story, is just dripping from every interaction. Sir Ronald explicitly questions her. He asks if this is a, quote, difficult and rather frightening job for a woman.
Yeah, and even Elizabeth, his secretary, later refers to it as an unsuitable job.
Which is wild. But her supposed weaknesses, her youth, her gender, her lack of police authority, they actually make her invisible.
Exactly. They allow her to just slip right past everyone's defenses.
But I have to push back on the premise for a second. Let's look at this logically.
Okay, lay it on me.
If Sir Ronald is this incredibly arrogant, powerful man, why on earth hire an inexperienced 22-year-old? I mean, why not hire a massive London firm?
That is the exact question you should be asking. Because based on the text and his psychology, he didn't want a real investigation.
He wanted a sham.
Right. He wanted a novice who would fumble around, find absolutely nothing, and report back. It would give him the peace of mind that his secret was totally safe.
Wow. So his arrogance was actually his ultimate downfall.
Completely. He underestimated her entirely.
And it's so Chestertonian, isn't it? G.K. Chesterton always loved the idea that ordinary, unassuming people are often far more observant than the so-called experts.
Oh, absolutely. Cordelia is very much in that Father Brown mold.
Yes.
Yeah?
She doesn't have the institutional backing of a Hercule Poirot or a Sherlock Holmes.
Right. Holmes has his magnifying glass and his encyclopedic knowledge of cigar ash. Poirot has his little gray cells and his international reputation.
And Cordelia just has a really keen understanding of human nature. She's almost like a younger, grittier Miss Marple in that way.
That's a great comparison. She understands sin, basically. Which brings us to the actual crime scene, because Sir Ronald thinks it's a simple case of a tragic university dropout.
But the moment Cordelia steps onto the scene, the physical evidence tells a wildly different story. Let's break down that visit to the cottage at Summertrees.
Okay, so Mark had dropped out of Cambridge about 5 weeks prior, right, to be a gardener.
Right, which is already a bit odd for his social circle.
Yeah, and at the cottage, Cordelia finds these glaring anomalies. There's an uncleaned garden fork left deep in the earth.
An unwashed coffee mug on the table.
And a typed suicide note, quoting William Blake, something about, down the winding cavern we groped our tedious way.
But the real crucial clue, the thing that absolutely blows the suicide theory out of the water, comes from Sergeant Maskell.
Yes, the local police sergeant.
He reveals this detail about the knot. Mark was hung with a leather strap, tied in this really complex bowline knot.
And there's only 4 inches of slack between his neck and the hook on the ceiling.
Which, as they deduce, is literally impossible.
Right. A grown man simply cannot physically tie that specific complex knot, with his hands above his head supporting his own weight, with virtually no slack.
It's just anatomy and physics.
Exactly. The noose had to be made first, slipped onto his neck, and then he was hoisted up.
It's like a movie set where the set dresser totally forgot to check for continuity errors.
Ha! That's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, you don't burn all your personal papers in the great, meticulously typed and flawless suicide note and then, leave your garden fork dirty and your coffee unwashed.
Right. Human behavior just doesn't work that way, especially when planning something so final.
But it really highlights the tension between what is suspected and what can actually be proved.
Yes, because the police, like Sergeant Maskell, they knew it looked wrong.
He had that hunch.
He did. But without any signs of a struggle or, poison in his system, they just defaulted to suicide. It's the path of least bureaucratic resistance.
Which is so frustrating. But Cordelia, because she isn't burdened by an official caseload, she can just lean into those anomalies.
She has the freedom to be obsessed.
Exactly. But the physical clues are only half the puzzle. To really understand the scene, she realizes she has to understand the victim.
And that means infiltrating his tight-knit circle of Cambridge friends.
Which leads to this massive cover-up by the Cambridge clique. She tracks down Hugo, Sophie, Isabel, and Davy.
And they're just the epitome of entitled class privilege.
Oh, totally. And they initially claimed they were all together at the Arts Theater watching a Pinter play when Mark died.
A very convenient, very cultured alibi.
Right. But Cordelia applies relentless pressure, and she finally breaks them. The big reveal here is just shocking.
It really is one of the best twists in the story.
Isabel admits she actually went to the cottage alone and found Mark already dead.
But the state she found him in, it's grotesque.
Yeah, he was dressed in women's underwear, a black bra, and Marks and Spencer panties.
And his face was completely smeared with this bright purple lipstick.
Plus, there were nude photos laid out on the table.
Right. And unpack their reaction to this because it's wild.
Well, they believe their friend died accidentally during some sort of innocuous sexual deviation.
Right. Autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hugo and Davy, their first instinct is to completely alter the crime scene.
I know. It's insane.
Wait, they find their friend dead, and instead of calling the police, they clean the scene. They strip off the lingerie, dress him in his regular jeans, and then forge a suicide note.
Using his typewriter to type that Blake quote, all to protect his reputation from his domineering father.
It totally challenges your concept of loyalty versus legality.
It does. But the profound irony here, and this is where P.D. James just shines as a writer, is that the friends staged a suicide to protect Mark from a scandal. But they were completely unaware that the actual murderer had initially staged the deviant sexual scene to ensure the police would write it off as an embarrassing accident.
Oh, man. So the killer wanted it to look like a weird accident to avoid a deed homicide investigation.
Exactly. The friends inadvertently helped the killer by replacing one staged scene with another.
That is it's brilliant plotting.
It's the kind of complex mystery structure that British detective fiction does so well.
Speaking of that, the audio production here is fantastic. You can really feel the claustrophobia of those scenes.
Oh, the BBC sound design is top-notch. The subtle background noises, the crisp dialogue, it creates such a distinct atmosphere.
It feels very different from American crime stories, doesn't it?
Definitely. American crime fiction, especially the hard-boiled stuff, tends to focus on action, corruption, the mean streets.
Lots of shootouts and car chases.
Right. But this British style is so much more about the internal psychology, class dynamics, and the quiet, sinister things happening behind closed doors.
Yeah, the violence is almost always domestic or intimate.
Which is terrifying in its own way.
So true. And if Mark wasn't actually engaging in some secret deviation and he didn't kill himself, the motive had to lie deep in his past.
Right. Cordelia's focus has to shift from how he died to who he actually was.
Which takes us to Section 4, Bloodlines and the Italian Deception.
This is where the story explodes from a locked-room mystery into this massive, multi-generational fraud.
It all starts with a mysterious funeral wreath. Cordelia traces it back to Nanny Pilbeam, the old nurse of Sir Ronald's late wife, Evelyn.
And Nanny Pilbeam reveals that Evelyn had given her a prayer book. She was supposed to give it to Mark on his 21st birthday.
Cordelia finds the book and decodes this tiny pricked message inside. It has Evelyn's initials, a date, and the letters AA.
Which seems like gibberish at first.
Yeah, but Cordelia remembers Mark's blood donor card. He was type B negative.
And this is where the biological impossibility comes in.
Right. She tricks Sir Ronald's doctor into revealing his blood type over the phone.
A great bit of deceptive detective work there. So clever. She finds out Sir Ronald is type A. And Evelyn's message meant she was also type A.
And scientifically speaking, 2 type A parents absolutely cannot produce a type B child.
Which means they orchestrated a massive fraud.
Exactly. Evelyn's domineering father had left a 400,000-pound fortune, but it was contingent on a grandson.
And Evelyn couldn't conceive.
So she and Ronald faked a pregnancy. They traveled to Italy and literally brought back a child.
It's like the ultimate long con corporate heist, but using human biology.
Yes, it wasn't about love or family. It was entirely about securing £500,000.
And the true mother was Elizabeth Leeming, Ronald's own secretary.
Which ties perfectly back into the theme of truth. Sir Ronald is this respected scientist, a man whose entire life is supposedly built on objective facts.
Yet he built his fortune and his laboratory on a biological lie. The hypocrisy is just staggering.
And again, very Chestertonian. The idea that the most respected, rational men are often the ones capable of the most profound moral corruption. Absolutely. But Cordelia's brilliant deduction makes her a massive liability now.
Right, the hunter is about to become the hunted in the most terrifying way.
Which brings us to the well and the confrontation. Cordelia is ambushed at the cottage by Chris Lunn.
Sir Ronald's fiercely loyal, almost robotic lab assistant.
Yeah, he throws her down this deep covered well to drown and replaces the heavy lid.
The sound design in this scene in the radio play, the splashing water, the heavy thud of the lid, the echoing pant. It is genuinely harrowing.
I was holding my breath listening to it. But her escape is incredible. She uses the very strap that was used to hang Mark.
Right. She'd been wearing it as a belt.
She uses it to strap herself to the bottom rung of an escape ladder so she doesn't fall back into the water.
It's such a brilliant use of a prop.
She's eventually found by Miss Markland. And we learned Miss Markland has her own tragic connection to the well. Her illegitimate child drowned there years ago.
Adding layer upon layer of domestic tragedy.
So Cordelia survives. She chases Lunn, who ends up dying in a car crash.
A very sudden, brutal end for him.
Yeah. And then, soaking wet and furious, she marches straight into Sir Ronald's study.
The ultimate confrontation.
She lays out his entire crime. He killed his own son because Mark found out the truth about his parentage.
Right. Mark possessed a conscience. He planned to reject the massive fortune because it was stolen.
And that rejection would have ruined Ronald's pending Woolington Trust grant.
It would have exposed the entire fraud.
But what really chills me is Sir Ronald's response.
Oh, it's terrifying.
He doesn't break down or confess in a panic. He practically applauds her logic.
He's so detached.
And then he points out she has zero proof. He claims Mark was a, quote, self-righteous plague.
Right. How do you fight a villain who is perfectly rational and completely untouchable?
It's infuriating.
He represents the ultimate corruption of the intellect. He views human life, even his own son's, as a mere variable in his grand equation for scientific funding.
He genuinely thought he had outsmarted morality itself.
He did. He thought because the law requires proof and he destroyed the proof, he won.
But he forgets that there's another person listening.
Someone who doesn't need legal proof to enact justice.
Which brings us to the climax. Poetic justice and the burden of truth. Elizabeth Leeming overhead the whole thing.
She heard the man she loved admit to murdering their biological son.
So she steps out of the shadows, and she shoots Ronald dead with Bernie Pride's gun.
A perfectly executed moment of vengeance.
But then Cordelia makes a truly shocking decision. Instead of reporting the murder, she helps Elizabeth stage it as a suicide.
Right. She crosses the line.
She uses a trick from one of Bernie's old police cases. She places Ronald's thumb on the trigger and his palm around the back of the butt.
To perfectly mimic a self-inflicted wound.
The full-circle nature of this story is just awe-inspiring. She started by investigating a staged suicide and ends by saving one herself.
It's a profound moral ambiguity. She stepped completely outside the law to achieve what she views as a higher justice.
And then comes the epilogue, the interview with Chief Superintendent Dalglish.
Dalglish is such a classic P.D. James character.
He is. And he pokes holes in her story. He knows she couldn't have fallen down the well accidentally, and he knows Lund was likely fleeing from her.
He suspects the truth, but he can't prove it.
But then he reveals that Elizabeth Lemming just died in a car crash in Italy.
The case is totally dead. There's nobody left to prosecute.
But the best part, Dalglish reveals that Bernie Pride was his old acolyte, someone he had fired for not being good enough.
That is just beautiful irony.
It really is. Bernie's teachings, passed down to Cordelia, ultimately allowed her to outsmart the great Dalglish himself.
It's such a vindication for the ordinary overlooked person. Again, a very Chestertonian concept.
Exactly. So, to briefly recap this incredible journey, we went from a dirty garden fork to a multi-million-pound biological fraud and ended with a morally ambiguous cover-up.
And it still resonates so strongly with modern audiences today.
Well, without a doubt. It forces you to reflect on the nature of secrets. Think about how many lives were destroyed simply because people refused to accept the truth of their circumstances.
Right. Evelyn's infertility, Mark's true parentage, the friend's arrogant assumptions about Mark's death.
Everyone was clinging to a fabricated reality.
And it led to absolute disaster.
It did. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
At the start of the confrontation, Sir Ronald says, people at the mercy of what they call their conscience are never safe.
He thought having a conscience was a fatal weakness.
Right. He thought he was untouchable because he lacked one. But in the end, it was Cordelia's conscience, her radical decision to protect a grieving mother, rather than uphold the strict letter of the law, that became the ultimate instrument of his destruction.
A brilliant paradox.
So it leaves you wondering, is true justice something that happens inside the clean, bureaucratic parameters of a courtroom? Or is it the quiet, morally terrifying decisions we make in the shadows when no one else is looking?
That is something to chew on, for sure. The BBC radio drama format really allows those deep, philosophical questions to linger in the air.
It really does. Classic audio drama just has a way of sinking into your bones.
Barely more.
So that's all the time we have for this broadcast. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.